Hey, this is Plague Warrior here, and I know I've been away for a long time, just trying to reassess my channel, reassess my comic book company. So we're going to try something a little different here and switch things up on this channel, and only review American independent comics or manga, because you know how sometimes it takes about 2 years to get your independent comic to you in the mail. And we're going to start today off with Isom #1. Now I'm going to critique this book as hard as anything else because I want it to succeed. You know, if we don't hold ourselves up to high standards, then we're going to start putting out garbage just like the mainstream. So let's get started. So when I first bought the book, I've only watched some of Eric July's videos. I don't know if he talked more about his Isom book throughout all his videos or not. But when I took a look at just the campaign, I was assuming that it was just a small graphic novel or just a regular size graphic novel due to the page count and the thickness of the book. And when I got it in the mail, I thought it was. But after reading it, I really only consider it an extra large floppy, just because it doesn't go through an entire story arc. It's not like he starts off at one point, just like in a movie. He starts off at one point, goes on a journey, learns a lesson, and then it ends by him defeating the bad guy. That doesn't happen. It's more like the first 20 minutes, so that's going to make it a little bit harder to review, just because we don't have a full sense of what the entire story is going to be about everything he's going to do throughout it. So we have to basically review just the first 20 minutes of it, and then we'll have the story to maybe go back and do an entire review of however many issues it takes for him to complete this first story arc.
But for this particular story, we're introduced to our character Isom. He does a good job of making us interested in what he's doing, where he's been. He starts off on this farm, gets a call from his sister that his mom's best friend's daughter got kidnapped and she needs to be saved. And since it's his mom's best friend's daughter, he's going to go help her, because his mom would be disappointed if he didn't. That's pretty much the main plot thread throughout this first book. You don't get to see, there's not going to be much going on of like major turns within the story. He fights these guys, loses, recovers, goes back, fights them again, wins. That's pretty much what happens. I know it sounds simple. Sometimes simple can be good. In this case, it's okay. It's not exceptional. It's not bad. It does a good job. So it seems like he's wanting to get off on a running start with this story, in that not only are we introduced to Isom, we're introduced to his other character, Uriah. She doesn't play that major of a plot point within the comic. It's just really just simple introduction. We're introduced to Alpha Core, and then there's some other characters in the very back of the book. I don't think they're even connected to the main story. It's more like a preview for another comic, almost. At least that's what I got from it, the feel from it. Now, there was some characters that were in a bar that they were doing something. I'll be honest, that was, I didn't understand. I didn't know if that was the Alpha Core and I just didn't recognize them from their costume, without their costumes, or was that somebody totally different that's going to be introduced later? I'm not sure. I was very confused by that part. He's trying to introduce so much at one time. He's introducing subplots. He's throwing a lot in there, and I think he's trying to get off to this running start. And my suggestion would be, don't try to rush. Don't rush this thing. Warner Brothers rushed with Justice League, and look what happened. It's a pile of crap. instead take the slow and easy approach. Don't worry about introducing 4 or 5 different main antagonists and these 4 or 5 different subplots. Worry about just telling Isom's story. Worry about, taking him on just this one journey, and then, maybe in one book, introduced one character. And, throughout the entire first story arc, have 2 subplots or a subplot. Don't worry about 4 or 5 different subplots. Show me Isom. Don't worry about introducing other characters. Show me Isom. What's he like? Where does he come from? How did he get his powers? Because when throughout one part of the book, when the main antagonist Darren is talking to Isom, he's like, I remember you when you were a kid. He says you weren't exceptional athletically or mentally. You weren't dumb. It was like he was kind of the person in the middle that just kind of wanted to stay in the background, out of sight, out of mind. So nobody really thought about him whatsoever. And that's the way I took it. So did he have these powers and was keeping them secret? Or was it that he didn't have powers and then he got them? Is that what happened? So more stuff like that would be nice. Help me get a feeling of his character. Give him choices. If there's a cat in a tree and there's a little kid there that wants him to save the cat, does he take the lawful good approach and go save the cat, hand it off to the little girl, and he smiles at her, making her feel safe? Does he tell her to go do it herself? Does he say, I don't have time for this? Or is he kind of like a chaotic evil type character and take out a bazooka and blow up the cat in the tree? Runs off laughing. What is he like? Give him choices. Let's see what type of choices he makes, so we can get a good feel of his character. That's what I would suggest. Main antagonist of the book, isn't like I said, his name's Darren. He's got some good one-liners. I really like his line near the end of the book about talking about empires. What is an empire? What makes an empire? I feel like that was a well-written line. I really enjoyed that. However, I didn't get a sense of a major villain like this. And maybe he's not. Maybe he's not this villain that's going to be around forever. I don't know. But and he's not. So far, he's not super powered. Maybe he'll get superpowers later on to go fight Isom with. Maybe he's more like a Kingpin character. But I want to see him do something really dastardly, something really evil, something to show how ruthless he is, or something. So, give him choices. Show me what his thoughts are, so I can get a better idea and feel like this is a good evil character. Because right now he just feels like a guy that's going to be a one story arc type of guy. Maybe he's going to be kicked out. Somebody super simple. Going back to Isom, I will say it's interesting. There's one part in the story where we're not sure if he's an accept or not, because he gets put in the hospital, and in the hospital they're like, we ran these tests we usually run for accepts, and he failed all these tests, and then the doctor says, well, the tests aren't that great. It is an interesting question whether, is he a part of these accepts, which accepts are like the superpowered individuals. Is he an accept and the tests weren't good enough to identify him? Or is it that he came through his superpowers by other means and he's not really an accept? Kind of like think about Spider-Man. If Spider-Man was tested as a mutant, he'd fail, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have superpowers. And he just is not a mutant. Going back to the other parts of the book, considering the illustrations are beautiful. The fight choreography is very detailed. I will say there's a couple of instances where they could have improved, where they don't show the impacts on 2 different fights or 2 different fight scenes. He punches somebody through a door, and all you really see is the guy on the floor with the door already open. It's fine if you don't want to show him punching him and going through the door and hitting the ground, but I would at least had the guy being flying through the door and then falling on the ground and doing it there rather than him just lying on the ground. The door already been bust open. The other impact is where there's like a 007 Jaws-like character. I don't think he's ever named in the book. The reason I say he kind of reminds me of Jaws is because if you look at cover A, he's got his teeth on a set of chains that is like trying to yank out. They're fighting and they're about to collide, and it's a big old splash page, and then the next scene is they're already, backed away from each other, like they've already been thrown backwards from the impact. You gotta show the impact, and then you show them collide backwards. You don't ever skip the impact, especially when you're building up to it on that splash page. As a matter of fact, I would have not done the splash page. Those two about to collide, I would have done the splash page on them actually slamming into each other or fists hitting each other, and then I would have, showed them backing off. The splash page would have been the impact. But most of the fight choreography is nice. It's easy to follow along because when you do these comics, it's very easy to get lost in these fight scenes of, this goes there, this goes here. Well, how did he spin around and do that? It's very easy to follow. I will say that there was one scene, I won't ruin the scene or ruin the comedy bit, but he threw in one comedy bit in the book, and it generally did give me a chuckle. So, kudos on them for that, because it's very hard to write comedy, especially in novel form. One thing I will say, since it feels like just the opening of the book, not much is going on, so it's like it does set you up for wanting more, but it also, you kind of feel deprived a bit. Like a small cliffhanger, but it's not really much of a cliffhanger. It's not something that will it grabs me and it hooks me for the next book. So after thinking about the overall comic, I will say that when I did read it the first time, I was a bit disappointed. Like I said, I was expecting a graphic novel. I was expecting a full story arc. But then I had to say, okay, let me back away from this a bit and think of it as an extra large floppy. Let me let it marinate for a couple of days. Let me go back and reread it. And after I reread it, I liked it a lot more. I liked it. I think it was because I was expecting something different. But once I was like, let me just take it for what it is, I liked it a little bit more. There's some editing errors in the comic. I'll try to throw one up on screen so you can see it. Something simple, something that it really doesn't take you that much out of the story, like too much. But, it just kind of throws you off just a little bit. You can get really interested about Isom's powers. I want to see if he saves the girl. If I want to go to my rating system where I break it down into two parts, artistic-wise and then entertainment-wise. So artistic-wise, give it a 3 out of 5. It's very not. It's not exceptional. It's not bad. It's good. Like I say, follow the fight scenes well. Nothing extraordinary fighting, but the fighting is done well. Isom, the character, is done well. You're given some questions. Not many answers throughout the book. The writing has some good speeches in there, but the main plot seems kind of simple, at least since it's only starting out. That's the way it feels like. There's a little bit too many introduction of different characters for my taste. I could have seen Alpha Core just being in there just simply because, they're, I don't know if they're getting their own book, but they seem more a part of this story because they're kind of like the people that are taking over the police. Not taking over the police, but helping the police the most. But like Uriah she seemed to be thrown in there to make a guest appearance for her book. She wasn't an integral part of the story. So you could have left her out and just made her own book. It does a fine job, so that's why I give it a 3 out of 5. Now, for entertainment wise, like I said, since it's only it feels like the very first part of the story arc. There's not much going on. You do get some funny bits. You are introduced to these characters very well. To be personally honest, I like the Jaws character better than I like the Darren character, just because he was weird. He seemed, he had like a power to him, and he's just kind of crazy looking. I would have liked to see more. I hope he's more in there. So there's some good entertainment value to it. It's not going to be 100% thrill ride. So I give it a 3 out of 5 as well. So if we combine it all, I give it a 6 out of 10, which is good. I do recommend this book. It'll be interesting to see where he goes with it on the next one. If he can raise the stakes, kind of clean some stuff up a bit, maybe not introduce so many characters, stick with a good story, I could see this thing getting higher and higher and getting better and better. So I'm interested in seeing where it's going. So that's my review for Isom number 1. Please stay tuned. So, on this channel, what I plan on doing is the first Saturday or Sunday of every month doing a comic book or manga review, and then the other weekends of the month maybe just we just talk the talk about things that are interesting or things that can inspire for writing, or maybe even talk about my own comic I'm trying to work on. But thank you very much for listening or watching, and I hope you have a great weekend.